antiseptic smells like certainty, like the specific chemical cold of a room where someone has decided everything messy has been accounted for. I have spent enough time in places where nothing was accounted for to find it almost comically optimistic. My name is Nora Pierce. I had been a per diem night shift nurse at Crestview Regional Medical Center for 9 months when the parking lot outside the ER filled with Marine Corps transport vehicles. 260 boots hit the asphalt in formation. And a gunnery sergeant walked through those automatic doors and asked for Commander Pierce. Nobody in that building knew who he was talking about. I did not look up from the chart I was holding. Let me tell you what happened before that. My name has 2 histories. The one on my name badge says Nora Pierce, RN, per diem. The other one, the one that belongs to a different decade, a different country, a different version of my own face, says Commander Nora Pierce, United States Marine Corps, Force Reconnaissance, call sign Ironside. I do not use the second name. I have not used it in 5 years, 2 months, and some number of days. I stopped counting because counting felt like waiting. I took the per diem position at Crestview because per diem nurses are part of the building the way the fluorescent lights are part of the building. Necessary, overlooked, replaced without ceremony when they stop functioning. The night shift runs from 1900 to 0700, and at night the ER belongs to whoever is willing to be there, which is never anyone important enough to pay attention to a quiet woman in borrowed scrubs doing her job without drama. I wore my hair pinned flat. I kept my eyes down. I had a slight catch in my right shoulder. Shrapnel, the lingering kind. The kind the surgeon said was too close to the brachial plexus to remove safely. And when I carried anything heavy, I shifted the weight left, which completed the picture of someone unremarkable. Someone you don't look at twice. I had engineered that picture with the same precision I used to apply to everything else, which is to say, precisely. The ER at Crestview smelled like bleach and used coffee and faint floral from a plug-in air freshener that someone in administration had decided was better than the truth. The fluorescent lights hummed, that low abrasive frequency that settles behind the eyes and stays there. The linoleum was cold through my shoes, and the charge desk printer going off every 40 minutes was the closest thing the night shift had to punctuation. I knew the exits. Both of them, always. The main bay and the service corridor east wall. Plus the roof access 2 floors up that nobody else on staff had bothered to find. Old habit. The kind that keeps you alive in places where exits matter. To the night staff, the ER was just work. To me, it was a very comfortable place to hide. The veteran in Bay 4 had been there since 1700 hours, which meant he'd been there for 4 hours before I came on shift, and no one had done more than triage him. His name was Garza, 61 years old, Marine Corps, Gulf War, 2 tours. The chart said chief complaint, chest pain, non-specific. What the chart did not say, what charts rarely say, because the people who write them are not always looking for the right things, was that his chest pain was positional. That it worsened on exertion and improved slightly with the head of the bed elevated. And that the rhythm on his monitor had been doing something subtle and irregular for the past 20 minutes that the overnight resident had not yet been in to see. I noted it when I came on. I noted it the way I noted everything, without showing that I'd noted it. And I flagged it in the chart and left a note for the resident and went on to the next bay. Dr. Claudia Marsh was not the overnight attending. Dr. Claudia Marsh was the Director of Emergency Medicine, which meant she was the person responsible for this department's reputation, metrics, budget, and above all, the correct functioning of its hierarchy. And the hierarchy at Crestview, as she had explained to me on my second week there in a conversation I had not invited, placed per diem staff at a precise and deliberate remove from anything resembling clinical decision-making authority. She was 53 credentials from 3 separate institutions displayed on the wall of her office in frames that cost more than my car. And she wore her authority the way some people wear perfume. Constantly, generously, without consideration for the people standing nearby. She found me in Bay 4 at 2200. I was doing a secondary assessment on Mr. Garza. I had pulled the curtain, and I was watching his rhythm on the portable monitor I had brought from the supply rack, because the monitor in Bay 4 had been logging intermittently for 6 days, and I had noted that in the maintenance log, and nothing had been done about it. His rhythm was doing the thing again, a subtle, occasional widening of the QRS complex that, in isolation, meant almost nothing, and in context, meant I wanted someone with prescribing authority looking at this man's chart before the end of the hour. Dr. Marsh pulled the curtain back. Per diem staff do not perform secondary assessments, she said. She said it at the volume of someone who has calculated that Mr. Garza should hear this as clearly as I do. You are here to perform assigned tasks. Bay 4 is not your assignment. His monitor has been logging intermittently. I brought a portable. His rhythm is showing intermittent QRS widening, and I'd like the resident to... You'd like. She said it the way you'd say the words out loud to demonstrate how absurd they are. You are a per diem night shift nurse, Ms. Pierce. You don't have clinical opinions. You have assignments. She took the portable monitor. She handed it to the care tech standing behind her. Return to your assigned bay. I looked at Mr. Garza. He was looking at his hands with the expression I recognized, the one that means a person has spent a long time watching people be dismissed on his behalf, and has learned that his outrage costs more than his silence. Yes, doctor, I said. My voice was flat and even and gave nothing away. A muscle in my right shoulder moved once. The shrapnel site, always the shrapnel site when I was working to stay still. And I let it. Just the once. Then I returned to Bay 2. The break room had a window facing the parking structure. At 2240, I stood there with coffee that tasted like a warning, thinking about Mr. Garza's QRS complex and the arithmetic of time that governs certain cardiac events, and thinking about the fact that I had left medicine, the real version, precisely so I would not have to make calculations about when to step in and when to let the system do what systems do. The deal I made with myself at Camp Lejeune in 2020. Sitting across from a colonel who kept using the word transition like it was a weather forecast. That deal said, "You do not carry the weight of this anymore. You set it down." I had been a Force Recon commander for 11 years. I had run operations in Fallujah, Ramadi, and 3 locations I will not name in a hospital break room. I had kept people alive in conditions that the word difficult does not address. With inadequate equipment, insufficient time, the specific cold clarity that arrives when options have run out, and what remains is only what you know and whether you are willing to use it. I had left because there is a point, somewhere in the second decade of that life, when you understand that you have spent so long running toward the worst possible version of every situation that you have forgotten what it feels like to stand still. I'm not Commander Pierce anymore. I'm Nora Pierce. I restock carts and monitor rhythms, and I go home at 7, and I sleep for 6 hours, and I do it again. The thought that followed that one, the one I did not allow myself to finish, was about Mr. Garza, and his rhythm, and the clock above the break room door that said 2251. At 23:15, Dr. Marsh added a note to Bay 4's chart. Patient's rhythm within normal limits, monitoring to continue. I saw it when I passed the charge desk. The portable monitor was back on the supply rack. Mr. Garza's bay curtain was closed. Something in my chest did a thing I had spent 5 years training it not to do. At 23:20, Dr. Marsh called the overnight resident into her office for reasons unrelated to Bay 4. At 23:22, the Bay 4 monitor, the one that had been logging intermittently for 6 days, went to a flatline alarm for 11 seconds, then resolved. The care tech silenced it. She noted it in the log. She did not call anyone. I was in the medication room when I heard it. I stood with my hand on the drawer handle and I counted to 5 and I stayed where I was. And then something happened in the parking lot. The vibration reached me through the soles of my shoes, not rotors, not aircraft, but the distributed ground-level tremor of heavy vehicles in coordinated formation. I had felt it before, in the lead Humvee approaching Ramadi. The whole convoy's weight transmitted through road and chassis and boot until you were part of the movement. I lifted my foot slightly. I was sure. I looked out the medication room's high window. The parking lot of Crestview Regional was full of Marine Corps transport vehicles. MTVR 7 tons, at least 6. And behind them, 2 UH-1Y Venoms that had set down in the open lot east of the structure with tactical precision. Marines were stepping down from the transports in formation. Not chaotically, in formation. I counted silhouettes in the lot lights and stopped at 200 because the point had been made. My hands were very still. I held them out in front of me and looked at them. Still. I put them back at my sides. Everyone else in the ER heard an alarm. I heard a sequence. The automatic doors at Crestview's ER entrance opened at 23:26, not smoothly and not quietly. A gunnery sergeant in Service Alpha uniform came through first, alone, deliberate, moving at the pace of someone who has already accounted for every obstacle. Behind him, 2 lance corporals took positions flanking the door. Through the glass, the formation in the lot waited. Dr. Marsh materialized from her office in under 90 seconds. "This is a medical facility," she said. "You cannot bring—" "Ma'am." The gunnery sergeant said it without looking at her. He cataloged the room the way I had cataloged this building on my first night. Exits, sight lines, personnel. "I need to speak with your staff. I am the director of this department, and I am telling you, ma'am." The same word, the same volume. The full stop at the end was absolute. Dr. Marsh stopped. He turned to the room. The night staff had gathered. 2 nurses, 3 techs. The resident with his stethoscope still around his neck. Everyone was looking at the gunnery sergeant. Nobody was looking at me. I was against the east wall near the service corridor, and I had moved there without deciding to. My back was flat to the wall. My hands were in my pockets. Not here, I told myself. 5 years. You are Nora Pierce. "I'm looking for Commander Pierce," the gunnery sergeant said. He did not shout it. He said it at a conversational volume that nonetheless filled the room completely, the way certain voices fill rooms. "Force Recon. Call sign Ironside." He looked around the nursing station. "The commander is here. I need her now." The overnight resident looked left. The charge nurse looked right. The 2 techs looked at each other. Everyone in that room moved their eyes to find the source of a name that meant nothing to them. I was the only person who did not look around. I was looking at the floor, at the old mustard-colored linoleum, at the scuff mark near my left shoe that had been there since my 2nd week at Crestview, and that I had noted and never mentioned because floor scuff marks were not my assignment. My hands were in my pockets. My right shoulder had the familiar ache of the shrapnel, and I was focusing on that, on the specific geography of that old wound, because focusing on something concrete and physical was how I stayed where I was. The gunnery sergeant's eyes moved through the room. They found the stillness. They found me. He looked at me for exactly 2 seconds. Then he took 1 step forward. "Commander Pierce," he said. Not a question, not a request, a coordinate. He had triangulated me by the single fact of my not searching, and he was stating my position the way you state a position on a grid. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The word landed in the ER the way a flare lands, illuminating everything it touches. I looked up from the floor. I looked at him. I pushed off the wall. The movement was slow. I was not hurrying. I walked toward him the way I had walked into briefings for 11 years. Not aggressive, not hesitant, simply moving with the knowledge that I was exactly where the situation required me to be, and that everything else in the room was peripheral. My posture changed. I felt it happen, and I let it. Something that had been compressed and angled and deliberately minimized for 5 years, allowing itself, just fractionally, to return to its original dimensions. I did not feel taller. I felt accurate. "Gunny," I said. "Commander." He reached into his breast pocket and produced a folded sheet. He didn't hand it to me. He held it up. "We have a Marine in Bay 4 who is presenting with a third-degree AV block that the facility has not identified. His pacemaker failed 4 hours ago. He needs transcutaneous pacing initiated immediately and a cardiologist on the phone inside 20 minutes or he will code." He paused. "We were told you were here. We were told you would know what to do." I was already moving toward Bay 4 before he finished the sentence. "Move," I said to the care tech in the corridor. My voice did not sound the way it had sounded for 9 months at Crestview. It was cold and specific and without softness. The voice of someone who has given commands in places where the difference between a command and a suggestion is measured in bodies. The tech stepped back. The overnight resident, Patel, appeared at my shoulder, young, capable, uncertain, and I did not slow down. "Third-degree AV block, failed pacemaker," I said. "We're initiating transcutaneous pacing. I need the defibrillator with pacing capability. I need pads placed in the AP position. Anterior pad left of the sternum, posterior pad below the left scapula. And I need the rate set at 60 to start." "Do you know the AP pad placement?" "I've read it," Patel said. "That's fine. Watch my hands." I was not Nora Pierce anymore. That was the thing about the training. It does not live in memory the way a learned fact lives in memory. It lives in the body. It is a different kind of knowing. I pulled the curtain of Bay 4 and looked at Mr. Garza, who was awake, pale, whose heart was working at 31 beats per minute according to the monitor that had, apparently and finally, decided to function. He looked at me. "I told them something was wrong," he said. His voice was slow, but his eyes were clear. "I know," I said. "We've got it. I need you to lie still." I placed the anterior pad myself. Left of the sternum, correct position, the heel of my hand applying the specific pressure that ensures contact without discomfort. A technique I had used in conditions where discomfort was the last thing anyone was measuring. The posterior pad went below the left scapula. Patel watched. His hands were shaking slightly. Mine were not. My hands have not shaken during a procedure since 2011, when a corpsman named Diaz talked me through the first one I ever ran alone, in a forward aid station in Ramadi, with generators failing and a Marine who was going to die if I got the pad placement wrong. I did Diaz's count. His voice in my head. His cadence. I set the rate. I set the output at 70 milliamps and looked at Mr. Garza's face for the grimace that tells you the current is reaching the cardiac muscle. He grimaced. "Good." I looked at the monitor. The rhythm changed. The paced spikes appeared, regular, 60 beats per minute, each one followed by a captured QRS complex. The rate climbed toward the target. Mr. Garza's color, almost imperceptibly, began to shift. The specific movement from gray toward something that had more red in it. The color of a cardiovascular system returning to the pressure it needs to do its job. "Capture confirmed," I said. "Patel, get cardiology on the phone. His name is Garza. He needs a transvenous pacemaker placed tonight. And the conversation needs to start in the next 5 minutes. Tell them the treating physician initiated transcutaneous pacing with confirmed capture at 60 beats per minute." Patel was already dialing. I stood at the side of Mr. Garza's bed and watched the monitor and did not speak. Behind me, through the curtain, the ER had gone very quiet. The gunnery sergeant was in the corridor. He did not come in. He waited with the patience of someone who already knew how this was going to resolve. "You were the one who flagged my chart earlier," Mr. Garza said. His voice had more air in it now. "Yes. You knew." "I had a concern," I said. "I'm glad it was addressed." He looked at the monitor. He looked at the pacing spikes marching across the screen with the regularity of something mechanical and correct. "You were in," he said. It was not a question. "Yes," I said. "Marines?" "Yes." He didn't say anything else. He looked at the ceiling the way veterans look at ceilings, not blankly, but inward, processing something that doesn't have the right words yet. Then he nodded, once, to himself. Cardiology was on the phone within 4 minutes. I stepped out of Bay 4 and into the corridor. Dr. Marsh was standing at the nursing station. The gunnery sergeant was standing 6 feet from her. The 2 lance corporals were still at the door. Through the glass, the formation in the parking lot had not moved. 260 Marines, standing in the sodium lights of the parking lot of Crestview Regional, at ease, waiting. "Commander Pierce," the gunnery sergeant said. He reached into the breast pocket again and produced a second sheet. This one larger, folded in thirds. He held it out. I took it. It was a service record summary, my service record. Someone in the chain had pulled it and printed it and put it in the breast pocket of a gunnery sergeant and sent him to a hospital in the middle of the night, which told me something about the level of the request that had initiated all of this. I had not been asked to look at it. I looked at it anyway, because it was mine and because I had spent 5 years not looking at it. He turned to the room. Commander Nora Pierce served as a Force Reconnaissance Commander with the 1st Marine Special Operations Battalion for 11 years. Deployments to Iraq, Afghanistan, and 2 theaters I won't name here. She personally commanded the extraction of 31 personnel from a compromised forward position outside Ramadi in 2017, under direct fire, 2 of her own team critically wounded, and kept every one of them alive until medevac arrived. Silver Star, Bronze Star with Valor, Navy Commendation Medal with Combat 5. He paused. She retired as a commander. She came here. He said those last 3 words without irony, without pity. He said them the way a navigator states a position, factually, as a point of departure for what comes next. Dr. Marsh had not moved. She was looking at me with an expression that I can only describe as the specific look of a person whose entire architecture of assumption has been revised without their permission. Her face had no response trained for this. There was no version of her professional history that had prepared her for this information about this woman, and what that looked like on her face was a kind of very quiet collapse. The gunnery sergeant straightened. He brought his right hand up in a salute that was exact and unhurried and contained in its geometry. 11 years of acknowledgement that I had stopped expecting anyone to offer. The 2 lance corporals at the door came to attention and followed. Through the glass, I saw it move through the formation in the parking lot. 260 Marines coming to attention in a wave that traveled from the door to the far edge of the lot in under 2 seconds. And then they were all still, all saluting, all holding it. The sound of gear and uniform and equipment settling into that stillness came through the glass in a register I felt in my chest rather than heard with my ears. I was looking at the gunnery sergeant's face. He was looking at mine. I raised my right hand. The shoulder ached the way it always aches. The shrapnel, the permanent reminder of the night I earned the Silver Star and the scar in the same 20 minutes. And I did not adjust for it. I held the salute. I held it for the full count. I dropped it. He dropped his. The wave moved back through the parking lot in reverse. The overnight resident, Patel, was standing in the corridor with his phone in his hand and his mouth open. The charge nurse had both hands pressed flat to the desk surface, as if she needed the contact. The two techs were very still. Mr. Garza had turned his head from inside Bay 4 and was watching through the gap in the curtain. He was still at 60 beats per minute, captured and regular, and his color was close to normal now. He was watching the way veterans watch things, not with surprise, but with recognition, as if the world had briefly arranged itself in a way he found familiar. Dr. Marsh remained at the nursing station. No one addressed her. The gunnery sergeant looked at her once, a single, brief, complete look that said everything it needed to say and nothing more, and then looked away. He did not require her to speak. Neither did I. "Is there anything else you need tonight, Commander?" the gunnery sergeant asked me. "Cardiology is inbound for the patient in Bay 4, I said. "Make sure your vehicles give the ambulance bay clear access." "Yes, ma'am." He turned. He walked back through the automatic doors. The two lance corporals fell in behind him. Through the glass, I watched the formation move, the specific economy of 260 people who have spent enough time moving together that the movement has become a single thing, indivisible, each person a component of one larger intention. They returned to the transports. The UH-1Ys powered up east of the lot, their rotor wash lifting the dust in a flat expanding circle that swept across the parking lot lights. They lifted. They were gone. The ER was very quiet. I went back to Bay 4 and checked the monitor. 60 beats per minute. Capture holding. Mr. Garza was asleep finally, his face relaxed in the specific way of a body that has returned to the blood pressure it needs to rest. I checked the pad connections. I checked the output setting. I checked the rate. Everything was where it needed to be. In the corridor outside, I could hear Patel on the phone with the cardiologist, speaking in the careful, measured voice of a resident who has just watched something he does not yet have the framework to categorize and is doing his best to continue functioning. I went to the supply room. I restocked the IV lines in Bay 2, the ones I had been planning to restock when the parking lot filled with Marines. I arranged them in order of gauge, small to large, the way I had learned to arrange them in conditions where finding the right line in the dark with one hand was the difference between a procedure that succeeded and one that did not. The habit lived in my hands. It always would. The fluorescent light hummed above me. The ER printer went off at the charge desk, 40 minutes since the last time. The plug-in air freshener emitted its small optimistic cloud of floral certainty. I straightened the last drawer of the supply cart. I closed it. She turned. There was work to do. If Commander Pierce's story stayed with you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to the channel. We tell the stories of quiet heroes who never asked for recognition and never needed it. Drop a comment below and tell me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this one travels.